The consumer vision that is pushed by advertising and which is conquering the world is based fundamentally, of course, on a notion of economic growth. More consumption requires more production, so it is pushing industrial production. Now, industrial production has costs. It requires resources, raw materials and energy, and there is now broad consensus among environmental scholars that the Earth simply cannot sustain present levels of economic expansion, especially as more and more third world nations transform their economies to industrial economies. We simply cannot keep going the way we have. Look at resource depletion. We are running out of vital supplies, and if we project into the future, we can anticipate when we may run out. That is, if we take what we know we have, known reserves, and we generously anticipate for what we may be able to find, and we correlate that with what we will need based on predicted levels of economic growth, then we have a timetable for when we will run out. An important study using these methods put it the following way. If the present growth trends in world population, industrialization, pollution, food production, and resource depletion continue unchanged, the limits to growth on this planet will be reached sometime within the next 100 years. This is because industrial production uses up resources and energy at a rate that had never before even been imagined by previous populations. Since 1950, the world's population has used up more of the Earth's resources than all the generations that came before. In 50 years, we have matched the use of thousands and thousands of years. The West, and especially Americans, have used the most of these resources, so we have a special responsibility for the approaching crisis. In another 100 years, we will have exhausted the planet. The clearest indication of the way in which we produce is having an effect on the ecosphere of the planet is the depletion of the ozone layer, which has dramatically increased the amount of ultraviolet radiation that is damaging or lethal to many life forms on the planet. In 1985, we discovered the existence of a huge hole in the ozone layer over the South Pole that is the size of the continental United States. The activities of humans are changing the very makeup of the Earth. Bill McGibbon, in his book The End of Nature, reminds us that we have done this ourselves by driving our cars, building our factories, cutting down our forests, turning on air conditioners. He says the history of the world is full of the most incredible events that change the way we live. But all those changes are dwarfed by what we have done in the last 50 years. He says, man's efforts, even at their mightiest, were tiny compared with the size of the planet. The Roman Empire meant nothing to the Arctic or the Amazon. But now the way of life of one part of the world in 1/2 century is altering every inch and every hour of the globe. The situation is so bad that the scientific community is desperately trying to get the rest of the world to wake up to the danger. 1,700 of the world's leading scientists, including a majority of Nobel laureates in the sciences, recently issued this appeal. Human beings and the natural world are on a collision course. If not checked, many of our current practices may so alter the living world that it will be unable to sustain life in the manner we know. Fundamental changes are urgent if we are to avoid the collision our present course will bring. It's important to avoid the prediction of immediate catastrophe. We've already done a lot of damage, but the real environmental crisis will not hit until sometime in the middle of the next century. So we have some time, but not much. But to avoid the catastrophe, we have to take action now. We have to put in place the steps that will save us in 70 years' time. The metaphor to think of is that of an oil tanker heading for a crash on the shore. Because it's so huge, and because of the momentum that has been built up, to stop crashing, the oil tanker has to start turning well before it reaches the coast. We have to anticipate the momentum. If we start turning too late, we will smash into the coast. That's where we are right now. We have to make fundamental changes in the way we organize ourselves, in what we stress in our economy, if we want to avoid the effect 60, 70, 80 years down the road. We have to take action now. In that sense, this generation has a unique responsibility in human history. It is literally up to this generation to save the world, to make the changes we need to make. Because if we don't, we will be in barbarism and savagery towards each other in 70 years' time. We have to make short-term sacrifices. We have to rethink our relationship to the car. It was fun for a while, but now it's just choking the life out of the planet. We have to make real changes, not just recycling, but fundamental changes in how we live and produce. And we can't do this individually. We have to do it collectively. We have to find the political will somehow to do this. And we may even be dead when its real effects will be felt.